All right, let's dive into one of the biggest puzzles in the history of science, a question that spans 1,000 years, two incredible civilizations, and gets to the heart of how we think about the world. Think about this for a second. For more than a millennium, China was, without a doubt, the most technologically advanced civilization on the planet. So, why didn't the scientific revolution, the birth of modern mathematical science, happen there? Why did it spark in a divided and, honestly, a less advanced Europe at the time? This is the central riddle, and it's famously known as Needham's grand question. And our guide on this journey is the brilliant scholar Joseph Needham, who dedicated his entire life to this very puzzle. His words really capture the spirit of what we're doing here. We're going to piece together the clues, one by one, until the true picture starts to emerge. Okay, so where do we even begin? Well, our first major clue isn't in some dusty laboratory. It's actually in the very fabric of society itself. It all boils down to one simple question. Who was in charge? And wow, the difference was just night and day. In China, for 2,000 years, you had a system where power came from knowledge. An incredibly tough exam system picked out the best brains of the nation to run the country. But in Europe, totally different story. Power was inherited. It didn't matter how smart you were, what mattered was who your father was. It was all about birthright. And look, this wasn't just some abstract political theory. This core difference shaped everything, and it had real life-or-death consequences on the ground. Check this out. In China, technology like the super-efficient crossbow completely leveled the playing field. Suddenly, a well-trained peasant could take down a heavily armored lord from a distance. Armor becomes kind of useless. This fosters a society that has to value intellect and persuasion over just brute force. Meanwhile, in Europe, the armored knight was basically a walking tank. You couldn't reason with him. Force was the ultimate argument. So that massive difference in society, it was actually rooted in something much, much deeper. It came from a fundamentally different way of looking at the world. Chinese and European thinkers didn't just govern differently. They saw the entire universe differently. The big idea in the Chinese tradition was something called organicism. They saw the universe not as a machine with a bunch of separate parts, but as one giant, living body where absolutely everything was connected. There was no hard line between spirit and matter or between us and nature. It's a huge contrast to the Western way of thinking, which loves to split the world into pairs, mind versus body, good versus evil, the observer versus the thing being observed. And this organic mindset, well, it shaped the very nature of their science. Instead of hunting for big, abstract mathematical laws that applied everywhere, Chinese science became amazing at detailed, practical classification. It was a science of deep observation and understanding relationships, not of breaking things down into abstract parts. And this is a perfect example. This ancient table classifies different types of soil, but just look at the detail. It goes way beyond color or texture. They're including the water table depth, the color of the water, even an associated musical note. I mean, wow, that's organicism in action. It's holistic, it's interconnected, and it's incredibly pragmatic. Okay, so we've got these two totally different worlds, right? One run by scholars who see the universe as a single organism, and another run by knights with a much more, mechanical view. So what happens when these two scientific traditions finally meet? That brings us to our third clue. Needham, our guide, had a great term for this: the fusion point. It's that moment in history when scientists from both traditions could finally start to understand each other, when their disciplines started speaking the same language, and could finally merge into one single global science. Now, this table is so revealing. It shows when contact was first made, the transcurrent point, and when the two traditions fully merged, the fusion point. And just look at the time lag. For abstract sciences like math and physics, fusion took only about 30 years. But for botany, it was over a century. And for the incredibly complex, holistic science of medicine, well, fusion hadn't even happened by the year 1900. You can see the pattern so clearly here. The more organic the science, the more it dealt with messy, complex living systems, the longer the lag was between contact and fusion. And what this suggests is pretty profound. The Chinese organic worldview wasn't a barrier to science. It was just a different kind of science, one that the West, frankly, was very slow to integrate and understand. So, all of this brings us to our conclusion, and it allows us to completely reframe that whole question we started with. Maybe, just maybe, Asking, why didn't the scientific revolution happen in China, is the wrong question to begin with. Listen to this amazing story. In the 17th century, the Kangxi Emperor was presented with all the latest astronomical knowledge from Jesuit missionaries, and he made one tiny but absolutely crucial edit. He insisted the works be called New Methods, not Western New Methods. Think about that for a second. With incredible insight, he understood that modern science wasn't the property of any single culture. It was something new, a tool available to all of humanity. So in the end, the story of science isn't about one culture winning. It's about the fusion of different ways of knowing. The Western approach gave us powerful, abstract laws. The Chinese organic tradition reminds us of interconnectedness and context. And that leaves us with a final thought for our own time. You could say the West developed a science that could dominate nature, while the East developed one that sought to understand its place within it. In a world defined by the immense power of science, maybe the most important question now is how we fuse not just our methods, but our values.